Joining us now on Six News Daily, she is the member for Fowler in the federal parliament. She was elected at the 2022 election and she is running it again now. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Leo. Thanks for having me on Six News. I follow you guys quite a lot. You're doing great things.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. So, look, what have you been really hearing from the community as the top issues that they are facing right now?
Look, a lot of people are coming to me and telling me that their energy bills have gone up, from families to small business. Insurance costs have gone up. Their grocery bills have gone up. I just came back from door knocking today in a small suburb in Fowler, a place called Warwick Farm. There are so many working Australians, working class, if you can call it that, people who work on railways, lines, pensioners, people with disability. And they are all telling me, look, they don't trust any of the major parties. That's the first thing. And Warwick Farm is kind of the Labor heartland in Labor's, used to be Labor's heartland in Fowler. And people are telling me that, they're very disenchanted with the major parties, disenchanted with politicians overall, by the way. And I kind of said, I'm an independent, and I said that, I do keep the government accountable, and I, ask and ask the questions, the hard questions. I don't just stick to parroting any of the government's lines. So I try to tell them that. But that's today's door knocking. People were they don't believe that the government is there for them, for the working people. But generally, cost of living has been a front and centre of people's minds here in Fowler, in southwest Sydney, and I have no doubt middle Australia.
But for you personally, what have you made of the Albanese government's performance over the past 3 years where you've been sitting in Parliament and observing it?
Look, there have been some good policies, such as, the cheaper childcare. For me, that is a good policy. However, what I have observed in the last 3 years in the federal parliament is that a lot of our policies, there isn't a huge substance behind it. So the example is that cheaper childcare, while we are trying to give cheaper, affordable childcare to every, families in Australia, that's not means tested. That means those who don't need it still get it. But also the fact that we have a workforce shortage in childcare. So therefore, it's very hard to make life easy for families who need to take their kids, put their kids through childcare. The other policy that I think, such as the National Reconstruction Fund, which is for Made in Australia. I don't know if you follow that very much, Leo, but that was a $10 billion fund to supposedly help local small to medium-sized manufacturing in Australia to manufacture in Australia. Not a single dollar has come out of that fund to medium-sized or small manufacturing businesses to help them scale. We don't know where the money, we don't know what that promise of $10 billion, what happens to that money. And it's 3 years and none of the, major or small to medium-sized manufacturing business that I've spoken to, they have not seen it. So how do we encourage local manufacturing when the tagline, or when the government emphasize on local manufacturing or made in Australia, when we're not making anything in Australia really? A lot of times is we're importing.
I'm curious.
So
No, go ahead. Sorry.
so I think that there's a lot of headline grabbing policy announcements, absolutely, but such as building 1.2 million homes. Really, can we achieve that? And it's been a real interesting time for me to watch the machinations of a government and what major parties do in the federal parliament, because It's my first time being elected as an outsider, not understanding, not knowing the process and the procedures in the federal parliament, but seeing these men, majority of the men, making these decisions and announcing, like I said, headline grabbing policies. Our community, our working Australians, are still feeling the shock, the electric shock with the rising energy bills, electric shock of rising prices that are hurting families a lot, especially in southwest and western Sydney.
I'm interested and curious just there because obviously, as you say, right, first time you've been in Parliament, you're not the only first time crossbencher over the past 3 years. Have you been able to work closely or form any kind of relationship with some of the other crossbenchers? You know, I guess the Teals of you're not Climate 200 funded, but have you been able to work with them and talk with them over the past 3 years, maybe more than you've had with major parties?
Oh, look, absolutely. As a crossbench, we're all independent. So therefore, you don't have the machineries of the major parties to really support the work that you do. So when a major policy piece gets introduced in the lower house, with only one staff at the federal parliament, it's very hard for me to really delve into the piece of policy. And so we kind of check in with each other, say, oh, what, especially those who've been there 2 terms, such as Helen Haynes, Rebecca Sharkey, and Zali Stegel, or Bob Catter or Andrew Wilkie, to say, oh, what do you make of this? And that they will kind of, kind enough to kind of give a quick briefing about what the piece of policy does, and then it kind of gives you time to really check in with your community to say, is this, how do we vote on this? So you do have conversations with the crossbench. We don't work closely together. We don't vote together as a bloc, which is what major parties do. But we do have conversations with one another. When I run into a vote, and when a bell rings and you kind of in a meeting, you think, oh my God, I have to run it. I don't know what it's about. If you ask a member of the government or the opposition, do you know what we're dividing on? No, they don't know, but they just move to the section where they have to move. Whereas the crossbench were trying to understand, okay, what are we voting on here? How should we vote on this? So it's quite funny from that perspective for me. We're always trying to find out what's going on.
I'm interested there as well, and we'll get into the broader topic of a hung parliament in a sec. But obviously, it has been, while narrow, a Labor majority. Have you felt like you've been able to be an effective independent voice when as far as the numbers go, the government does not strictly need your vote?
Oh, absolutely, Leo. I have been very effective, and I tell you. So when I campaigned in prior to the May 2022 election, my campaign message was on the cost of living, because I already knew out here in Western Sydney the cost of living was impacting people. Petrol prices were starting to go up, so I knew then that as soon as I get elected, I will need to ask the question in Parliament about what will the government do with the cost of living, especially for families that are driving cars using petrol. That will they reintroduce the fuel excise tax cut, which the coalition did under the during the COVID lockdown. The government said no, we don't have the money in the budget, we can't do that. So I asked that question to the Prime Minister, that asked that question to the Treasurer. And so cost of living was front and center of my campaign. The first 12 months, the government did not focus on the cost of living. Everybody was focused on the voice campaign, the voice referendum. And I then, in that 12 months, while they were focusing on the voice, I put to the government that they need to do something around the stage 3 tax cut, because I believe that stage 3 tax cut had to be revised because we're moving into a cost of living crisis period. No, they did not agree on that. I also put to the government they need to look at reducing the HECS debt, because again, the cost of living is impacting young people in our community traveling to university to study, while at the same time having to put up with the increase in the indexation, which is impacting the HECS help debt. No, the government didn't want to do anything about that in the first 12 months because everyone was talking about the voice. And at the end of the referendum, when the referendum failed, the government then pivoted to focus on the cost of living in 2024. And I continue to ask the question around HECS. I continue to ask the question of cost of living. The government then announced in their May 2024 budget that they would reduce the HECS help debt indexation from 7.1% to 3.1%. And then they also had the revised stage 3 tax cut. And then they introduced a $300 rebate for families and $325 for small businesses to help with their energy bills. So I believe my voice really gives not just the government but the coalition as well a glimpse of the experiences and the struggles of families and working Australians in Western and Southwest Sydney. So I think, I believe I've been very effective, and that's why the government's policies around that they're announcing now, including the Medicare rebate. I would say that I asked a question at the half of last year about why are they only giving Medicare rebate to those under 16 and those carrying a healthcare card. What happens to Middle Australia? And guess what the government announced? The Prime Minister announced a few weeks ago prior to the cyclone, which is an $8.5 billion Medicare rebate. So a lot of the things I raised in the Parliament, which the government don't talk about, but then they announce policies to actually really address those issues. So I would say I'm somewhat effective.
It's interesting as we talk about the possibility of a hung parliament. You know that's possible. I know that's possible. We've seen the polling, and it goes without saying it's not something that you've hidden. It's very much on record. You are a former Liberal member. Would it be wrong for people to assume that if there was a hung parliament, you'd be more inclined to negotiate with Peter Dutton than Anthony Albanese?
Yeah, I think it'd be wrong for people to just make any assumption, because assumption is make an ass out of you and me. That's assumption. Assume. I think that as an independent, I don't. The Liberal Party, ages ago, more than a decade ago, threw me out, and I don't have any kind of what do you call it? Strong affiliation or connection. I don't have that sense of, oh, I have to be supporting the Liberal because I was a former Liberal member who only had a short time in the Liberal Party, and the Liberal Party threw me out anyway. So what kind of, how would I be, what's the word? Be not loyal to them, but why would I be loyal to a party that really didn't want me in the first place? I'm here for the community in Fowler. I am truly independent. Like I said, I think some of the Labor Party policies I supported, not all of it, but that's what being independent is about, is looking at the policy bill by bill and how that really, and assess it on its merit and how that will actually benefit the people and the businesses of Fowler. So it's not about me. It's not about my ideology. It's about the people of Fowler. That's my bottom line. Whatever my interest is, I don't care. I'm here as a voice, as a vehicle for the community of Fowler, and what's best for the young people, what's best for the working families, what's best for the the pensioners. I'm here to advocate for them. So whoever can deliver and can give me the best, who can best deliver for the people of Fowler, that is someone that I'll be sitting down and having a conversation with, and somebody who's genuine in actually wanting to deliver for the community of Fowler.
Right. So we can basically at this point put you down as a either or. You'll see how it goes. We'll work
Either
it out.
or. Yes, I mean, if the majority of Australia gave, whoever has a bit more of the numbers, and then we'll sit down and talk. But the good thing about being independent is you don't belong to anybody, and you have the choice to choose to sit down with whoever comes to the table and say, this is what we can do for your community. And my community is front and center of my work, of whatever I do here. They come first.
You touched on this at the start in relation to major parties. Obviously, your election in 2022 was, I think, at least in part, spurred on by the particular candidate Labor did choose in Christina Keneally and some of the controversy that came with her candidacy. That is obviously not the case this time around. Why should we think that it's maybe not a fluke that you got in and it was just a kind of one-time backlash and they'll return to being safe Labor again? Why should people give you a chance of re-election?
Oh, look, I think the community in Fowler here, I'm not just somebody who just have flown in and got by fluke elected at the last federal election. I have been a local, I grew up here. Um, I came here as a refugee, grew up in a suburb not far from my office at the moment, um, went to school in the area. Um, and started my journalism cadetship in Fairfield and Liverpool, which is part of Fowler. So it's not as if I just moved in here 10 years ago and gone to politics. So I actually grew up here. So I am part of this community first and foremost. Secondly, I am an elected councillor, and I have worked in this community since 2008. So people know who I am. And thirdly, since having office, my staff just had a meeting today, just said, oh my God, can you believe it? They said our cases that we have helped is coming up to about almost 10,000. 10,000 in 3 years. Now, it surpassed the numbers that the previous office had dealt with. It was about, a few hundred cases. We are nearly 10,000 in 3 years. So to me, that's an indication that my office are doing a lot of community outreach, that a lot of people are coming here seeking help and knowing that we actually deliver. And yeah, look, you don't know what the outcome is of an election. Nobody knows. And I think it's going to be one of the most interesting elections, because even in neighbouring electorates such as McMahon, Werriwa, those Western Sydney so-called safe Labor seats, you're actually seeing the member actually door knocking, which is fantastic, because as a member of parliament, you need to be out there door knocking and engaging and connecting with your community so you can understand and advocate for them. And I'm glad that I led the way in that, and I'm sure that the Labor MPs are cursing me because they have to work, but we can't take our seats for granted. As long as the community voted for me and have placed their trust in me, I will continue to serve them. Going to about, to you talking about, what is is it a fluke and could it be go back to Labor? In my door knocking, Labor voters are disenchanted with the major party, with Labor, and people are disenchanted with the major parties. So with that, as you know, there's been this sense that the government has not delivered for the community on the cost of living. The trust in politicians is at a very, very low level, and I think is decreasing as months go past. So that will benefit independents, because as an independent, you do not parrot any of the government lines or don't party lines. You don't go out there and just nod and just say what the party tells you to say. Um, it's a great time to be an independent, because you know that you can keep the bastard honest, and you will call the government of the day to account and make sure that you speak up for the community and fight for what they deserve. And I believe I've done that.
I have to ask this though, because this is something that I've observed kind of in the background over the past couple of years, and I'm really curious on it. A few years ago, you were forming the Western Sydney Community Party with Frank Carbone. We really haven't seen much movement around that for some time. It's AEC registered, but as far as I can see, we haven't got branding, candidates, etc. Is that still going ahead for this election?
Look, I don't know yet, but I formed the party in preparation for the future of this Western Sydney community. I think that when you form a party, when you do anything, for me at least anyway, I always want to make sure that I have laid the foundation. Um, I need to get re-elected again for me to continue to build that foundation. It's no point rushing, forming a party, and then rushing running candidates, because I need to consolidate this the seat of Fowler first, and then start to grow. So I'm not don't write it off. I mean, it's there to help establish, so that to plant the seed in the ground, I suppose. But let's, for me, the focus is to serve this community, to make sure that I am going to continue to be a strong voice for them in whichever party forms government, and to advocate for our community needs first and get that delivered. And then I can think of, growth for the party in the future. But at the moment, it's there. Like I said, just you want to plant a seed first. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one small step, and that was a small step. I planted that seed, and let's see how it grows.
Do you plan to even use the party name on the ballot? I mean, I think at least last time I checked, you're still registered with
An
the
independent.
Parliament as an independent. Yeah, are you planning to use it at all? Because I mean, it does kind of seem weird for it to be dormant for 2 years. I know I had a name change last year, but it is just as you just said, it's just been sitting there for 2 years.
Yeah, it's planting a seed, and it's not rushing into anything, focusing on the work that I have to do now. It's not about me, it's about making sure that my community gets heard, and, focusing definitely on growth. But I want to lay the foundation, I want to consolidate Fowler. I want to make sure that we get, you know, the resourcing and the investment that we need first. And once we have served the community, then I can grow.
Even I will just ask that one again. Do you think it's even going to be on the ballot though? Do you plan on using it, or do you prefer the name independent under your name on the ballot?
Look, I prefer that. I mean, but you never, in politics, as we know, Leo, we never know. We never say, for me, you got, when you say it, you got to do it, and you got to say what you mean and mean what you say. At this stage, I don't know, but at the moment, it's still independent for me, and we'll see what happens on weeks out of the election.
All right, never say never. We will follow that very closely, and we'll follow the campaign in Fowler very closely. Diley, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure we'll catch up at another time. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks, Leo.